It was the race that was, or the race that wasn't, depending upon who you ask. Max Verstappen said, "Listen, you can't race here anymore. There's not much you can do." He's like, he made reference to Mario Kart. He's like, maybe we need to start throwing bananas on the track so people spin around. But the F1 cars, we've known it for a long time, are too big around the Monaco street circuit. It's an important circuit to the history of F1, but is it important to the future? We're going to talk a little bit about that today, Tim. So Tim, listen, I know we just watched the Indianapolis 500, or you did. I didn't get the chance to see it because I had to watch a playoff game between Dallas and Edmonton. But
it was a good race. It was a good race.
When you compare the Indianapolis 500 to Monaco,
I mean,
right?
Totally different. It's totally different.
Oh, totally different, or totally a better race?
I like Monaco for what it is.
Me too.
I love Monaco for Saturday qualifying. We'll get into this race because there were parts of it that I actually didn't mind. And then obviously the Indy 500 is the Indy 500, man. It's like, almost 400,000 people are there cheering on the drivers, and everybody's pushing the limits and the boundaries of speed and performance and human endurance, and everybody's risking it and throwing it on the line. And I love the 500. It's incredible race, incredible race.
I'm just gonna kick this off, Tim, and be unpopular. You ready?
Yep.
So here's what we got. We start the calendar with 3 pretty good races: Australia, China, Japan. Although there isn't a lot of passing in Japan, right? I like Australia's track. China's is pretty good. Japan's is good. Fast, legendary track. Great. Then we get Bahrain, which is an interesting track just because it tears the tires up, right?
It was a decent race. That was a decent race.
Yeah, decent race.
Yep.
But then we got Saudi Arabia and Miami.
Saudi was okay.
Which are not great races traditionally. And we're talking about racecraft, right? We're talking about the thing that brings us all into the sport. Then we have Imola, which, again, I like Imola.
Good race. I like that race.
Really good race. Really good race.
This really was a good race.
But I feel like then having Monaco this week, I think there's one too many, not enough racing races in there. I look at, if you have Saudi, Miami, and I think I'm gonna throw a little bit of Bahrain in there because sometimes Bahrain can be good and sometimes not. Then Monaco, that's like half of the first few races that are not extremely competitive. And I'm talking about on race Sunday. And I know, they tried the double pit stop thing today. They do sprint races on other weekends and that sort of thing. But here's the problem, and this is something that the hardcore Formula One fans forever have been on this governing body about. Are the races competitive enough when it comes to Sunday? Are the races worth watching? And I love Monaco, and I've loved Monaco since I was a little kid. It was the first race in Formula One that I could identify, right? That I knew what the track looked like. It was so unique and amazing. But I can't defend this anymore. And the reason I say that is, I'm thrilled for Lando. Listen, I'm a McLaren guy. Thrilled. Good for Lando. That's got to feel amazing. I'm not saying it's not taxing on the drivers. It's extremely taxing on the drivers. I'm not saying that the fans there don't have a great time. But when you're doing Formula One, you're doing it for the fans there, and you're doing it for the people watching at home. And this is the same governing body that for some reason, and it's money's the reason, we can't have Spa, we can't have Zandvoort, we can't have some of these other courses. And I know Zandvoort's not everybody's favorite, but still a not bad track in comparison. Can't have Spa every year. Got to have Monaco every year. Yeah. And that, for me, is a bridge too far. And I say that as a fan, Tim. I'm not a driver. I'm not somebody who's associated. I don't understand all the engineering. But I have to just start and just say, for Formula One, I know this is their marquee event. This isn't good enough. It's not good enough. The entertainment product isn't good enough in this day and age. There's too much going on in people's lives. There's too much available elsewhere that is better. And I'm just I know they signed up till 2030 or 2031, but they better figure this out because, either you put this track on a rotation and it shows every 4 years, or you just don't do it anymore and you do a driver's parade there to start the season or something like that. I don't think with the cars the size that they are, Tim, that we can do this anymore. And I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this because this is the third year in a row I'm man, I want something to happen today and nothing does. With this track, And I love this track, Tim. I love this track. So I want everybody to understand that. Can we do something with the regulations? Can we make the cars smaller? Can we, I'm not saying let's lose this track, but the racing sucks. And so, and I think it's okay to just say the racing sucks. Max Verstappen said it.
Yeah, it's not good.
If it's good enough for Max to say, I feel like we're okay to say it.
Right.
So then what can you do? What are the solutions, right? Rather than just throw it out.
I mean, well, this is what they're trying, right? Like this was one of the things that they needed to try. They had to try it. They knew they needed to try something. And I am good with them trying something. At least they're trying. Like, hell, we've had this race where it was like this for years. And F1 and FIA did absolutely nothing to try anything different. I appreciate the fact that they at least tried to do something different.
Okay.
And there were aspects of this that I actually really enjoyed.
So give me that. Tell me about that.
I enjoyed the fact that there was so much strategy involved that, you had teammates screwing over other drivers behind, pissing people off, team principals getting into it with each other. And we'll get into that in a sec because I got some info on that. And on top of all that, Adam, you had leaders and followers who had to navigate traffic not once, but twice in serious spots, serious conditions. You never knew what was going to happen. If a red flag had been thrown, some of these races for the leaders would have been screwed, would have been over. So there were aspects of it that did, for me, create a little bit of intrigue and interest, more so than years past. However, I agree with you. The racing here is tough. It does need to change, and they do need to think about changing something. Now, what is that they need to change? Can they change the track? No. I mean, how much room is there to change in terms of the actual structure of the track? I don't think there's any. This is it. The cars need to get smaller. That's all there is to it. And they need to get smaller. They need to get lighter.
Yeah.
And that's it. Or, I mean, you try something different. Throw them in, give everybody a Formula Ford car and let them have at it.
Well, we all saw the picture of that F2 race. Holy smokes. That crash, that was crazy.
And those cars are also, Adam, a little too big for Monaco, right? So, and you can't just take the size of these F1 cars and just automatically shrink them. It's not how it works. And next year's car is going to be a little bit smaller, but is it going to be enough? I highly doubt it. But with next year's regulation, the cars are going to be a little slower. And on top of all that, they won't have DRS. They'll have a push to pass system. So does that mean that it's going to make passing a little bit easier, especially at a track like Monaco, coming out of that last corner? You can get something done there. Going through the tunnel, can you get something done coming out of the tunnel? Maybe. We don't know. We have to wait and see what that looks like. I love this racetrack. I love the entire weekend. I had FOMO all weekend, Adam. Seeing all the people I work with there, trackside, getting to do the thing, working, covering. I had fear of missing out. I literally had to stay off social media, man. I had to do it. So look, maybe I'm not the best guy to, talk about, Monaco and just doing away with it altogether, because I do love Monaco. And as a former driver, still could drive if I wanted to, if I had the money, if anyone's listening. I would love to still race that track. I would love it. The challenge of it would be in another atmosphere, man. It would be incredible. So
that is all understandable, and I agree with that. I think generally people think that the Formula One cars, they want them to get not just smaller, they want them to be less wide, right? Because
they're too big.
They are too big. They are too big. And obviously, we've got a regulation change next year. They're a little shorter, but it's not that much of a difference. Is there a world where, Tim, by 2030, say when the next cycle of regulations comes up, that the cars are significantly smaller and perhaps heavier and perhaps less speedy, therefore contributing to people's safety? Is that, because I know Formula One used to be about the fastest cars on earth and blah, 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 blah. The reality is that we're reaching the point where human beings just don't need to go that fast. Right? It's just like extremely. It's like so
go
extreme.
faster, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is like, does the top speed need to be that, or can we be faster through the corners? Right?
Yes,
like that's where you're trying to find.
I got you. Yeah, no. Look, like the reason the cars are heavy is two things. One is the safety standards of the cars now have been increased, which, look, I'm here for. I mean, the safer we can make all of these things, the better. The other part of it is the power unit. Power unit's very heavy. The engine, the battery, those two things mixed together make the car extremely overweight. For next year, the weight reduction is coming down, but it is kind of minimal. The width of the car is shrinking, which is good. That's headed in the right direction. By the time, like you had said, on when we get to 2030 and we're looking at a new regulation change, an engine regulation change, which one of them comes first, what does that look like? Are the engines, are we going to go to V8s, and are they going to be like a hybridized version of a V8? Again, you're getting, a little bigger, a little heavier, still got the battery, still got all that technology and stuff. The car is still going to be heavy. So I think like the weight and what we're looking at may not be too different by that time. Right. And this is something that drivers complain about all the time, is the cars being too heavy, the cars being too heavy, the cars being too heavy. So look, like it is what it is at this moment. I like that F1 and FIA tried something. I have an idea maybe that they could try something different.
Like what?
Why don't they run them through all three compounds? Why don't I love that idea. It. You can pit whenever you want, but you have to use every single compound. You have the hard, medium, and soft. You got to use them all throughout the race, whenever you want. Do whatever you got to do.
I love that idea.
I'm into that. It's better than a two-stop mandatory, maybe.
Well, because that basically produces a two-stop mandatory at least.
But you have to switch up the compound.
I love that. No, I love that idea. I think that's great. Does that add another wrinkle to things, right? Because it is kind of fun, and I do want to talk about the actual like the race, because you see a guy like Liam Lawson holding everybody off so Isaac Hadjar can get away. And by the way, great weekend for Racing Bulls. They really qualified well.
Yes,
those are two young drivers at this course. That's not something you always see. So that was spectacular. Kind of fun to see that, because you do see that throughout other F1 tracks, but it's never as obvious or as detrimental than it is at Monaco, right? Because you're blocked, like they're just not getting through. So I want to know what you think about that, because a lot of people hate that. I actually like that strategy, and I think based on the track, it's one of the great things that you should look out for as a fan of the sport.
Well, I think like that's where everything sort of started when it comes to drivers backing up other drivers. It is a topic that you and I actually discussed on Thursday when it came down to us discussing this two-stop mandatory and what drivers would do to each other. And that was one of the things that you and I talked about specifically, actually. That's where it started on race day. Started with the Racing Bulls. And then once Williams noticed what they were doing, then they were like, aha, we're going to do that too.
Right.
But you know what? Hey, look, perfect way to do it. You wouldn't want to do it any other way if you were Williams, because you were holding on to some pretty good points paying positions, and you need those points. And I mean, hell, anybody would have done it. Any team would have done it throughout all of that. And so look, Racing Bulls, for them, Adam, needed the points, and they had to do what they had to do. I thought Isaac Hadjar was incredible all weekend long. And I thought also Liam Lawson, again, he was very good this weekend on a very difficult track. And this is a driver that we discussed about the confidence and just not really being there for the time being and having to build that up. And you really kind of saw him believe in himself this weekend, which was,
this is a track where you have to, right?
100%. And it was, so that was good to see. It was a really great story. And for them to just hang on to that double points paying position from both drivers was really impressive, Adam. I really have to take my hat off to them, because that obviously they don't have the fastest car, clearly. But it also shows us, and we can date this back to qualifying too, that their car is a lot more drivable, or has more drivable features than the Red Bull racing machine does, which Yuki Tsunoda has to battle with. So
yeah. we can talk about him in a second.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a whole different thing. But yeah, no, for Racing Bulls, Adam, this was a great weekend for them. But again, they were the ones who sort of kicked this things off, and Alex Albon really did throw them under the bus post-race press conference when he was asked about it.
What did he say, by the way? What did he say?
He said, well, the Racing Bulls started it.
Oh, my God. Well, hey, why not?
I love it. It's great.
What? Racing Bulls should own that because it's more, F1 is more than just speed. It's racecraft and its strategy, and they got 2 of the 3, right? Yes. Maybe they don't have the fastest car, but they got racecraft and strategy. And, when we talked last weekend, I think Liam Lawson's result last weekend was 14. And we said, hey, that's something to build on. That's better. I can look it up specifically for Imola. Where was Liam Lawson? Yeah, 14th. And it was like, that's an improvement. There's something. Oh, hey, he got something out of that car. He's not 17th. He's not just ahead of the 2 cars that crashed out or whatever. And then for him to qualify like this, I think is a real statement piece. Like Liam Lawson's probably back. And the car will go as far as the car will go. But he and Isaac Hadjar being as competitive with each other as they possibly can is the best possible thing for that Red Bull program because it's been on a lot of fire lately. Max Verstappen could leave in the next 24 months. We know that. That's been the case for a year and a half already. They got to have guys ready, waiting in the wings. And when you look at the way Isaac Hadjar, basically from the get-go, I know he kind of spun off the track in Australia, Tim, but he's kind of had this car figured out from the get-go, and it seems like he is outperforming even Red Bull's internal expectations of him.
Again, don't want people to get carried away with that because I think the Racing Bulls car has more drivability, right? It gives the driver more confidence, and it has by the looks of it, a fairly larger operating window. When I spoke with Hadjar and Lawson about it in Miami, they felt that the car needed more upgrades or updates. We're probably going to see those arrive in Spain. However, I don't want to take away what Isaac and Liam did on Sunday and on Saturday because there's very impressive performances from both of them. It is just a different car, though, than the Red Bull racing machine. And so you're putting... you're putting a driver like Yuki Tsunoda, who did well in this Racing Bulls car, by the way, and you're throwing him into, the RB21, and
and it sucks.
It's a very difficult car to drive and get into a window. I mean, Tsunoda's still struggling to try and keep it consistent. I mean, there are moments where you see how close he gets to Max, and you're like, oh, okay, he's figured something out, and then all of a sudden the thing just goes away from him and he's back to square one. And that's something that Yuki has talked about with this car ever since he's gotten into it, is the fact that the balance is always shifting and changing, and he's never really sure if it's going to be good or not. And that's hard to put your confidence in, man, when you're rocketing around a track like Monaco.
100%. And that's why, I mean, he got points last week. I think he finished 10th. Now he's 17th. And, that's not ideal, but it shouldn't surprise. It's not like, when we talk about Red Bull right now, when we say Hadjar and Lawson and they're getting confidence in their cars, we're not talking about a move here. We're not talking about Tsunoda going back down and Hadjar or Lawson going back up, something like that. That's not going to happen the rest of the season. They're going to keep this the way that they keep it.
I think you have to.
100% you have to. You can't throw a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old, whatever Isaac Hadjar is, into that. You can't.
No.
Yuki, I mean, this track I think was never going to be his friend with the way how pointy that car is. It just feels like that was okay, they kind of had that written on the wall. Next weekend in Spain, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Because he seemed to get something a little bit out of it last weekend in Italy, and I feel like, okay, we might see some Yuki Tsunoda points next weekend. This is just not the one. Now, let's talk about Williams too, because Carlos and Alexander, I never call him Alexander, Carlos and Alex, always now. It seems like it's a double points finish every weekend, Tim.
I know, and I want to try and tie in Mercedes into this conversation here.
Give it to me, because that's a factory Mercedes team that's being beat by 2 of their clients.
Yeah, I know, it's
McLaren
bad.
And Williams.
Look, I mean, this started for Mercedes going bad for them in qualifying with Kimi Antonelli crashing, and then Russell obviously having his electronics failure that he had in the just before the tunnel. So that's where the car came to a complete stop, and the marshals had to push him down out of the tunnel, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, his qualifying was over, and it was P whatever for him. So it wasn't good. He was completely out of the points, and it was going to be a very difficult race for Mercedes and for Williams. When they started noticing what the Racing Bulls were doing, they adopted that strategy right sort of then and there. And so Mercedes already was going to be doing that regardless. That was the plan for them going into this thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Was to basically, sacrifice one driver so another one could maybe capture a point. The problem is that the things that they wanted to happen didn't. They didn't get a red flag like they really needed. And they basically hung it out there as long as they could so they could try and get that red flag, but it never came. Same with the safety car. It never came either. It was funny. I heard from Toto Wolff after this one, Adam. During the race, he actually got a text from Williams team principal James Vowles. And the two of them are good friends for those who are listening or watching and don't really know. But James used to work for Toto for years. They're very good friends. Anyways, the text that James sent to Toto said, quote, "I am sorry we had no choice given what happened ahead." And this is during the race. Toto answered back, "I know."
It's very Star Wars of him.
So yeah, exactly. So he's like, totally understandable, got it. And basically, if it was the roles were reversed, they would be doing the same thing.
Okay.
So basically, they weren't upset with each other. I know there's been a video flying around, but look, those two are friends, and Toto would have done the exact same thing. James knows that. Toto knows that. But what George Russell went and did, I think it sort of it just shows us like how difficult this race was for them.
Yes.
To get so frustrated, to blow a corner, just to go immediately past Alex to take the position and basically say over the radio, Adam, to the the stewards, like, "Hey, fine, I'll take the the 5-second time penalty." But newsflash, it wasn't a 5-second time penalty because the stewards, they came down on George pretty harshly. I mean, they handed him one of the harshest penalties you can get when it comes to going off track, gaining an advantage. It was a drive-through penalty for Russell, and I think to rub salt sort of into that wound, Adam, is when George came in to serve that drive-through penalty. He returned to the track ahead of Alex Albon, by the way, but behind Carlos Sainz. So he was still in a Williams sandwich and didn't get away from it. So either way, Russell, he didn't really care about the penalty or anything at the end of this one. He said that, he even with the drive-through, he finished higher than he would have done without the drive-through. So
really,
figure that one out.
So like this is the thing. Like I think sometimes you just have a crappy weekend, right? Like I don't know. I saw Antonelli go out and I was like, it's just gonna be one of those. Gonna be one of those for those guys.
It's interesting to hear like both Williams drivers, Adam, very apologetic at the end of the race, even mostly towards the fans, and the people like us at home watching, saying it's not how they wanted to go racing, right?
Right.
Just was not how they wanted to go. And I think Carlos was frustrated, and he kind of felt like, I'm paraphrasing here, that it just felt manufactured, right? In a way. So
hey, manufacture it, man. Get your points.
Yeah, exactly, right. I think, and then also, Adam, like, even if it was a mandatory 2-stop, like, how much of this would have been different if it wasn't a mandatory 2-stop?
I don't think a whole lot, to be honest.
Right.
I didn't feel like that was like a crazy one way or another swing. I was hoping for something.
Like
I was hoping for somebody's wheel gun to get caught or something like that, but
I've seen drivers though back up entire fields to like help a teammate out at Monaco.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'm glad this year that we couldn't get somebody like Albon who was like driving the whole race on the same set of tires. That at least, you don't want that crap. You want there to be human element in there, and that's where I'm like, okay, well, with a pit stop, I mean, we saw it with Ferrari a couple years ago. Things can go wrong. So at least there's the opportunity for something to go wrong.
Oh, man. I'm trying to think, like, what 2022?
I think so.
I think
that
was or 2023. It was one of the other where Leclerc got called in and started raining.
Yes, yeah, and then there was the other one where he
lost it.
There was, and that wasn't that following the year he'd had the crash, started on pole but couldn't race.
Oh, that was 20. Yes,
was
no, wait, was it? It was either 2020 or 2021 that happened. Yeah,
bad luck, right?
Yes,
bad luck. So
I mean, what are you gonna do? If there wasn't, for Ferrari, like, yeah, we'll get into them in a second. But Adam, I mean, pit stop shenanigans when it comes to Monaco. I'm trying to think back while we sit here. Yes, Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah,
that one year they didn't even have the tires like ready. Like they were in the back of the group.
I think that was 2016.
Yeah, it's 20. I was gonna say 2016,
he won in
2017. Something. I think it was 2017. Because the tires were like in the back of the garage. And then the next year he won, but he won with like a limited gearbox with, I think it was Sebastian Vettel, like breathing down his neck for the entire finish of that race. I think Vettel was trying to force him into a mistake for at least 30 laps, if not more. And Ricciardo was able to hold him off with not as many gears in the gearbox. Yeah. So a very hurt car, and like didn't make a mistake, and again hard to pass, right? Vettel couldn't find a way past. Well, so
and he honestly, Daniel should have won a world championship, man. Like it just drives me nuts. I lost my mic there for a sec. It just drives me nuts that he did. That makes me sad to think about. Tim, I want to talk a little bit about. We're gonna work our way up the top 10 here. Esteban Ocon getting into position 7, huge for them. And Oliver Behrman, despite the penalty, still finishes 12th.
Yeah.
Like, I have to give Haas a lot of credit here. They are fighting for this.
Yeah, it's great. Esteban had it all started on Saturday for him. Just incredible. And I talked about it on the post-qualifying podcast, but and just an incredible qualifying from him that set him up in such a great position to capitalize on points, and all he needed to do was just keep it together for the entire race stint, and he was coming away with points. And that team was jacked at the end of this one, Adam. They were absolutely fired up for Esteban getting those points for them. Like, they were ecstatic, dude. They were so excited. So big congrats to Haas, the entire team, Esteban, because that was a hell of a drive. And this is where drivers make the difference at Monaco.
Yes.
That's the perfect example.
Well, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about last year at Monaco. Because last year at Monaco, he lost his job. That's where Alpine said to him,
that was it.
We've had enough. Yeah, and after the race, they issued the press release and said he won't be re-signed. He's going to finish the season. And that was because he was dive bombing Pierre Gasly, which is not an ideal situation.
Oh, sorry, before I just sort of cut you off here, Adam, we're going to dig into that here real quick, because
give it to me.
Who did the exact same move that Esteban Ocon did on Pierre Gasly and showed that it could work in the race on Sunday?
Who, Tim?
On the opening lap, by the way, too.
Tell us.
It was Kimi Antonelli.
That's right.
It was on Gabriel Bortoleto.
So it wasn't that crazy of a move at the time. We got angry comments when you said, as a driver, you would have done the same thing, Esteban.
Dude, I was getting...
People were like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
People were saying so much junk to me and stuff. I'm like, no, like, there's a gap. You go for it. What are you talking about? Yeah. And look what happened.
It worked.
It
worked. And I'm wondering today, Alpine's already made another driver change since Esteban left, right? Yeah. We know Franco's in there. And Franco 13th, like, whatever. It's hard to know really what his race was. Like, I think we're not going to know until Spain. But Pierre Gasly crashing out.
Yeah, in the back of Sonoda, yeah.
Second year in a row, this time not totally his fault. last year. I think this his fault this year. He did blame the brakes though. They're really struggling. Like they're just having issues, and it seems like that team needs to iron out the chaos. Like it's just that feels like a race where the chaos behind the scenes gets out on the track. Does that make sense?
Well, I feel bad for the crew and everybody who works really hard at the team, try and get the cars together and get them onto the track, and everyone who works behind the scenes works really hard down at that team. And yeah, I feel pretty bad for them for sure. But I mean, you can see that whatever it is they're trying to do back at factory and then have it, come to the car, bleed out onto the track. It's not working. I mean, I this was a difficult position to put Franco Colapinto in as well. We had said that before Colapinto even took his first laps in Imola, that this was going to be a difficult weekend for him. And sure enough, it was. Did have some balance issues with the car that he couldn't really get sorted out, but he was also talked a lot about how the C5, I believe it was, excuse me, how the C5 didn't operate very well for him at all.
Right. Now, Tim, I'm just going to jump to a couple of the questions because they have to do with what we want to talk about anyway. And this one is from Istanbul Leafs. And he says, what's going on between Lewis and his engineer? Now, this is something that's been a topic of conversation before. And they've been a little Lewis has been a bit testy with his engineer because they're sorting out their relationship. You said kind of going in this weekend that they seem to have it more and more figured out. There were some testy messages back and forth. Nothing. I mean, I've watched Formula One a long time. Like when Lewis isn't winning, he's pissed. So I'm not. I think people are just perhaps getting reused to the fact that he's in a really competitive car and believes he can win every weekend, which he hasn't felt like with Mercedes the last 2 years. Tim, what do you think is going on there? Do you think they're sorting that out? Do you think there's a problem? Where do you think they're
at? In terms of the relationship with himself and Riccardo Adami, it did sound like things were coming along pretty well after the last race in Imola in terms of their communication, because I felt that when Lewis was calmer on the radio, so too was Riccardo Adami.
Right.
And I think it was vice versa as well. There were quite a few information mishaps throughout the weekend. One of them being obviously Q1 when he was told about Verstappen on his way coming up to on a push lap coming up towards him, but said he was slowing down. So Lewis accelerated. And that wasn't the case, obviously.
Yeah.
And they would have seen that on the data, and they would have seen that on the GPS and the tracking as well. So, Adam, that could be Riccardo Adami getting information from someone to give to Lewis. That could be something that he is seeing. Maybe he just didn't see it very well. Yep. There's a number of different factors that go into it. So, we can't sit here and absolutely slam the guy because look, this is going to take time. I keep trying to say it. Like, this isn't an easy thing that's happening here. I just think it needs a little more time. I mean, look, Riccardo Adami is a good engineer. Look at what he did with Carlos Sainz, the two of them working together. Look what they were able to win. The performance they were able to squeeze out of the car.
They're the only ones who won against Max Verstappen.
They're the only ones who won. Yep, those two were the only ones who won against Max in 2023. So, this guy's a good engineer, and Lewis is a great driver. They'll figure it out. Mistakes are going to happen. I think the biggest thing that was glaring was the pace of the Ferrari, Lewis's in particular, in Sunday's race. So they have to figure out what was going on there.
Yeah.
Because when Leclerc is doing what he was doing, but Lewis was so far back, that needs to be addressed and that needs to be really looked into. That is more, that's a bigger issue to look at than communications over a radio. Because drivers are going to say stuff over the radio and it's a very emotional and stressful environment. So it's just the way it is.
They're on the edge of their lives.
Oh, yeah.
Literally.
So there's that. And I think for you look at how successful Leclerc had as a weekend, and we can talk about him a little bit more in a bit.
Yeah, definitely want to.
That's going to be a comparison they're really going to have to take a look at, Adam. That's going to be a very, very important thing.
Leclerc always does well here. At least he, we were talking about the times he'd been foiled, but really he'd always qualified well here. He finally won. He's from Monaco, as they love to say, the Monegasque driver. They really love to. Monegasque is such a word too. Like, it's not Canadian, it's Monegasque.
The principality.
Yes, exactly. The tax-free principality of Monaco. Charles Leclerc is from there. Second place today. Like, really, really good race from him. Obviously, he's going to want to win, but I'm looking at the standings here, Tim. Charles and Lewis are not that far apart, 79 and 63 points. And if you go to the team standings, Ferrari is 1 point behind Red Bull for the top three.
Mm-hmm.
And they are only 5 points behind Mercedes for second place.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming on stronger than I think people realize. And I know this was a bit of a really bad weekend for Mercedes, a step back for them. They're second place. McLaren right now is doubling up on everybody, but I'm looking at these three and I'm like, man, they're really close. I know Ferrari's frustrated, but imagine what happens when they figure it out. That's a monster, it feels like.
Yeah, it does, right? I mean, I was thinking about this, Adam, after qualifying, and then after I'd done the podcast and later that night, I was thinking that, like, the car, I was watching the Ghost car that F1 puts out on their socials at the end of the day, and the Ghost car is like a comparison between the P2 car and the P1 car during qualifying. So it was Leclerc versus Norris. And I was watching where the Ferrari was quick and where the McLaren was quick. I mean, the McLaren was good at curb striking, not curb riding. The Ferrari was good at curb riding, which was surprising to me. The McLaren was good at curb striking, which was Norris in the swimming pool, whatever it was, turn 13 or 14, the exit.
Yep.
Just pounded that curb, but was able to catch it when it lands and still go. That means that the compliance that the car had going over the curb, and Lando knew he could do it and the car would handle it. And then you could see in Leclerc is he couldn't do that. Yeah. So that's one thing that stood out, was curb striking. Curb riding for the Ferrari was really, really positive. Like, he was able to get the power down, there's a lot of grip. And that leads me to believe that this is like, that was more mechanical, wasn't so much aerodynamic. Because for Monaco, you would already have like full downforce on the car. Doesn't matter. It'd be more like the mechanical grip, your springs, your dampers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
It leads me to believe that, like, mechanically, that car is actually really good, but they struggle in slower speed corners. So there's again another thing there for them to dig into and figure out, because if they can bring some updates to sort of solve that, I mean, a lot of performance there, Adam. Like, a lot. I agree. I think Ferrari can unlock it too.
I think that they're a sleeping giant here. Like, I think we're talking about, they're underperforming. Okay, but like, they're awfully close to not underperforming. They're awfully close to being in second place and maybe catching McLaren in the back half of the season. You just don't know. I'm looking up right now. So our good friend Charles Leclerc has been with Ferrari since, if you can believe this, 2019 already. Can you believe that?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Wild.
6th season with them. He has now officially passed Fernando Alonso in terms of total podiums in a Ferrari all time. Now, Fernando did it in a shorter amount of time. Fernando had a 5-year run at Ferrari. Obviously, there were less races on the calendar than there are now. Ferrari was in a bad place, I think, when Charles Leclerc joined, much worse than where Fernando was too. So I think that kind of plays into it. But that puts already Charles in the top 10 Ferrari drivers all time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, they've had some unbelievable guys, but Charles got to be already closing in on that, right?
He's he's definitely up there. He's one of the favorites at that team, I would say, for a very long time when it comes to the fans. Obviously having Lewis there now is, obviously definitely going to be Lewis who's going to be on top of that one. But for a really long time, Charles was. that guy. I would say that, yeah, he would go down as, top 10 Ferrari driver. Sure. I would say he's probably up there 100%.
So like maybe would he match Alain Prost's? I mean, Alain Prost.
I don't know.
But he only had 2 years there.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of championships behind him, so I don't know.
Okay, but like we're just talking about your time with Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to answer, Adam. There's been a lot of really great drivers who've driven for them, right? Like Gilles Villeneuve is up there. Like, we're going back. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, obviously there's Schumacher. I mean, Barrichello has a ton of starts with them, and I would be interested to see points total where like Leclerc and Barrichello come together. I'd like to see how many points. But again, then the seasons were longer as well, so that would be a tough one to compare. It's a tough question to answer, Adam, but I think obviously Leclerc is super talented. He should be in the top 10 at one point in his life, if he's not already. This race for him, though, Adam, I think is one that got away, and it got away in qualifying. Mm-hmm. I think if he was able to nail down that pole, he would have came away with the win.
Oh, no question.
He would have won.
And he almost had
Sunday.
it. He almost had it.
And this is what I wanted to get into, because I think, now look, I'm not a strategist in any way, shape, or form. But when Lando Norris pitted for the first time, and Leclerc didn't, and stayed out, took the lead of the race, I thought to myself, you know what would be interesting? If Ferrari just left Charles out there until he got to traffic. And then as soon as he reached traffic, because there was a lot of it, bring him in. Because maybe by that point, things may have recycled a little bit. Lando probably would have been up to about P2 at that point, and then Lando would have gotten the traffic, and that could have been enough to get Leclerc out in front and back into the lead, because I think at the end of it, it was a 2-second differential between, the two of them. I mean, obviously, Norris took off once Max pitted at the end and got fastest lap of the race. So Norris was clearly fast and had pace. But I just thought that, what if they had just left Charles out for a little bit longer and allowed him to catch that traffic and then bring him in, and seen what happened when Lando caught the traffic? And then where was Charles going to cycle out to? Because I think there was maybe a different type of a strategy in there that they may have been able to look at. But again, they're using AI and stuff to do all this stuff nowadays. So I'm pretty sure that stuff's way smarter than me. So it was a thought that I had, though, when I saw them bring Lando in. I was like, man, they should just leave Charles out and let him catch up to traffic. As soon as he gets it, bring him in.
And the other thing I think we need to bring up with that part of the race, at least that high up in the race, is how big this was for Lando. When Charles got that, and Lando still, when he got the initial pole, preliminary, whatever they call it.
Yep.
And then they were waiting on Lando to finish, which was maybe 15 seconds later. Oscar comes through and you go, oh, no, he's going to stay in third, which I think McLaren's happy about, because at least Max stays out, right? Keep Max out of the top three. Mm-hmm. And then, Tim, I have to say, I was like, if Oscar's second or Oscar's third, I feel like, I don't know where Lando's going to land here. Right? Because I'm used to Oscar being the faster driver. Mm-hmm. And the second he went through fastest, I was like, whoa, it was like, wow, big jolt of confidence and a little, just a little bit of surprise. And I hate to say that. The guy was second in the World Drivers' Championship last year. He's second right now. He's only 3 points behind Oscar. But in the races leading up to this, Oscar's been the better driver. Today, though, and in qualifying yesterday, more importantly, he was the most confident driver, I think, on the track. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder for you, you got the driver's perspective, which is so unique. Guy like Lando, built a little bit different than your traditional Formula One driver in the sense that he's not the alpha dog out there. He's not going to kill people like Schumacher would put you into the wall rather than let you win, right? That's not Lando's style. What did you think about this weekend for Lando? Confidence? Does it change anything going into next season or next race and the rest of the season? Or was this just one of those, hey, he got it right on the right day?
I think for Lando, Adam, this was this could be that turning point that we've been waiting for Lando. He said at the end of this one that, this was the best he's driven since Australia.
Wow.
Australia! That's
a
all
long
the way
time
back
ago.
in March.
That's a long time ago.
So he's been working at this for months, trying to put together the perfect weekend. Obviously, his struggles have been with qualifying. He's been really good in the races. Like, it's just the fact is that he puts himself in a difficult position in qualifying when it comes to finding the right balance that works for him.
Yep.
And extracting the performance of the car that he needs to, and finding that balance with the brakes as well. And I think it is something that he has been working at now for the past few months to try and just get a consistent weekend going. Okay. And I think he had that here. So whatever he's been working on, he did mention it, but he never really went into detail as to what those things are, is paid off here in Monaco at a very, very difficult racetrack, extremely difficult racetrack to win at. It takes a lot of experience and years of driving at this track to pull out a win. And this is something he's dreamed about since he was a kid, was winning in Monaco. And the team obviously haven't won there since 2008, so obviously McLaren is stoked about the win. But I think, Adam, it's like, how much confidence does this win give him? I think Saturday gave him confidence. And he said that, the qualifying day he was almost happier with what he did on Saturday than
what he did today.
Yeah, what he did today. And basically it was a good weekend for him, like on a personal level. He was asked an interesting question. Let me try and remember. It was like, if he was this him hitting like the reset button? I think it was Nate Saunders who asked it. It was a good question. And he basically just said that, basically what I said, he'd been working hard over the last few months, and Australia was his best. So if Australia was the best, he had his worst. Yep. Now he's back to the best. So how can he go and take what he's gotten and maximize it and really push it? And he had mentioned that there were parts of the car that he needed the team to bring updates for. And he wasn't saying in terms of performance. It was more along the lines of like what he needs mechanically, I think, when it comes to qualifying. I think it also has to do with the brakes and how he's braking. That's what I think.
Yeah. You've said that for weeks.
Yes. And that the team needs to make for him, specifically for him, that he can use. Whatever that component is, I'm not too sure. I don't see anything coming to this car specifically tailored for what Lando needs for a while. I don't think that's going to happen for quite some time. So this consistency that Lando's built this weekend, Adam, he's going to have to keep it going. You get to Spain, got to keep it going. Come to Canada, it's got to be the same, right? You got to wash, rinse, repeat, because Piastri's getting him in qualifying, and that's basically what's put him behind in this championship. And Adam, you have 3 drivers who are in contention for the Drivers' Championship. And Lando is now 3 points back of the championship lead. Mm-hmm. This thing is going to swing back and forth. And it's going to come down to consistency and consistency throughout the entire weekend.
Right. And that includes sprint races too.
100%.
You're going to have to be good all the time. Piastri, 161. Norris, 158. Verstappen, 136. But don't let that fool you. Only takes a couple weekends and a crash for that to change. Verstappen's not that far behind.
Mm-hmm. I think like one of the things when we talk about this, so for Verstappen and Piastri, right? Because that was more Oscar's race for the team. They were saying at the end of this one that Leclerc was actually a little too far away from Piastri to leapfrog, and that wasn't really their race. Right, it was more along the lines was trying to cover off Verstappen as much as they could, and it's almost like foreshadowing, Adam, where it's like,
oh yeah,
I think Oscar and Max are going to be together a lot more than what we think they are going to be throughout the rest of this weekend, because Oscar just struggled to keep the rhythm with the car this whole weekend. It took him a long time to build up the speed in qualifying, build up the confidence. And you could see it. You could see it by the rear of the car really snapping a lot on him. And I think that a lot of that has to do with setup and trying to find that right balance and knowing when to push and knowing where the limit of the car is at certain points, even in the race, because we saw him actually brush the wall. I think he said on Saturday is like he hit more things in the last 2 days than he's ever hit in his whole career.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
And for Max Adam, I mean, like, I think that guy squeezed everything out of that car that there was.
What else could he do?
Wasn't much left
what else can he do? Look where Yuki finished. He's squeezing everything he can out of that.
So yeah, good. I would say damage limitation for both of those drivers. That's what this weekend was about. For Lando, it was about just proving that what he's been working on works, and to take that with him to the next few races. It's interesting. Like, he's even been off social media. Like, he says he still posts on social media, but he doesn't.
I'm sure he's got somebody doing it for him.
Yeah, he actually doesn't go on it lately. Like, he's been staying away from pretty much everything. So I found that quite interesting and actually really smart. Probably clears the mind a lot more and allows him to focus more on what he needs to focus on, you know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions we have here, Tim, from Noah, is Yuki under even more pressure than most Red Bull second drivers with how good Arvid Lindblad and Nicola
Lindblad, yeah,
or Lindblad, excuse me, and Nicholas Solov,
yeah,
are so that Lindblad's in F3, Solov is F. Sorry, Lindblad's F2, Solov's F3.
F3, yep.
My brain isn't working.
That's
and he said, do we owe Helmut Marko an apology for how stacked the RBR junior program is looking right now?
Yeah, I mean, those two drivers are looking really good. Pretty impressed with Red Bull Racing's pipeline at the moment. That's why, like, you and I were talking last week. We had a similar type of a question about switching Hajar into the Red Bull machine and removing Yuki, and there being rumors of that. And I'm just like, this is not a good idea. Like,
yeah,
you've got one, like, a really good talent there, and you need to let it flourish. You need to let it build. You need to make him hungry for that seat. Don't just give him the seat. You got to make him hungry for it. And he is putting in the work, and you can see it on the track. And I think you just got to leave him and let him get F1 experience this year. Maybe move him up next year. Maybe. And make sure you're developing these young talents that you've got coming up. Because, yes, it's a good question. They do have they have even younger drivers who are actually really impressive as well that I could see moving up at the same time.
Right. Yeah,
like,
but again,
and stuff,
that jump from F2 to F1 is something. It's really something. It does kind of separate people.
For sure. Like, it's such a huge step out. I mean, you're working with, like, so many different people, right? Like, it's incredible.
And the hybrid thing and all of it, the battery saving, all that.
Yeah, 100%. And so not only is it that you're working with so many different engineers, but it's just, again, like the tire compounds and just everything, man. There's just so much that goes into it.
Kyle Rumble wants to know, what would you do to try to make Monaco even better? Now, we started the show a little bit with this. He said the mandatory two-stop didn't work. Let's go through those ideas again, Tim, because I like that. So you say a mandatory two-stop would be in place anyway if you had to use all three compounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else would you do? Is there anything else you can do?
Yeah, I mean, Toto Wolff had kind of mentioned this at the end of the race. I mean, maybe you keep the mandatory two-stop, but you have some sort of a maximum delta time that you can slow up and to keep people behind you. Because obviously, I mean, Alex was really slowing up, right? Like Kimi Antonelli almost ran into the ass end of him. So that wouldn't have been good. So, I mean, there's that. You try and find some sort of a maximum delta time that you can slow the car to. How do you police That, I mean, there would have to be a lot that goes into it, and the teams would have to agree to all of that as well at the same time. And outside of that, I wasn't. I would say I always thought about what happens if you. So turn 10. So you're coming out of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about track modifications, right? Mm-hmm. So you're coming out of the tunnel. You have turn 10. Then you have turn 10, 11. They're kind of like together. Mm-hmm. And then I believe turn 12 is the long left-hander before you get to swimming pool, like 13, 14, 15, 16. So turn 12, you tighten that up just a little bit. And then the tunnel, I was thinking like, okay, well, what happens if you just got rid of turn 10 and 11? Is there too much compression there when the cars come out of the tunnel and go down the hill? That's why turn 10 still lives. Like, I have never been there to take a closer look at it. I would, maybe one day I'll get to do that. But I was always wondering, is like, what happens if you just clear out 10 and 11 and just make that one long straightaway, tighten up turn 12, leave that as like a passing opportunity, make that a DRS zone. But is there too much? Yeah, but is there too much? My one thing is like, is there too much compression for the car? That was my other thing.
Right.
So that was another idea I had. What do you think? Like, what did you think about? Like, were you interested at all? Like in the race?
Oh yeah,
like,
I'm always interested. No matter how.
I know you came out hot at the start of the show.
Well, I have to say it. I have to say it. I had to get it out there. But as far as track mods, like first off, I don't feel qualified. But the push to pass thing that you brought up is going to be really interesting because there are DRS zones on every track. Those are going away.
Yes.
Right. So push to pass is going to be down to, is the driver good enough with that button, confident enough with that button to make it happen? Mm-hmm. And I would like to see the race with Tim's modification with all 3 tire treads having to be used, right? Mm-hmm. And the push to pass before I make any more modifications, right? Because at a certain point, it's like if you add too much, it's like it's become a clown show. Like it needs to look like a race. Mm-hmm. You don't want it to become a gimmick. But at the same time, I want things to be a little bit more competitive. Listen, I'm not asking for 40 passes here. I'm asking for a few that are consequential. Like somebody in 5th passes somebody in 6th. Sorry, 6th. Somebody in 6th passes somebody in 5th. Like something like that. You go, whoa. In this track, that's crazy. That's what I want to see. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so totally does.
And that's it for our questions. We didn't get a whole pile of them. But that's okay, Tim, because we will be back again on Thursday. What do you got going on this week? What are you doing?
Well, we got to get ready for Spain.
Yep.
You and I have some simming to do.
We sure do.
And then we're working on getting ready for the Canadian Grand Prix coming up, obviously, in a few weeks' time. And so what comes with that is working on building out some of our features, our driver sit-down interviews, profiles that we had done, and building bigger pieces for SportsCenter, for TSN to really, really pump up this year's Canadian Grand Prix, similar to the type of content that we've done for the last few years at TSN and on SportsCenter. So it's going to be a lot of work this week, finalizing a lot of our pieces. They are, I don't usually like to toot my own horn, but they are really, really good.
You're excited about them?
Yes, I'm very excited for people to see them.
If you're not excited about them, how could we possibly be?
Yes, I'm really excited to, I'm really excited for people to see what we've built this year. We've worked, we have a small team, like I tell people at TSN, that we have working on our Formula One content, and they're very passionate about it, which is great. And they're a great group to work with. And so it's very appreciative. I'm very appreciative of it because we put a lot of work into it. I hope enough people get to see it and enjoy it. Which is, super important because, we put a lot of hard work into it. So we hope that people, racing fans and F1 fans, really enjoy it. But yeah, Adam, that's pretty much it. Just working on that, getting ready for Spain. Got some swimming and biking and running to do on that weight loss. On that weight loss train.
You're a big swimmer. Big swimmer. So,
yep.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds like it's going to be a busy week, Tim. So
there was actually Summer McIntosh, Adam, was. So she was staying at
Olympian Summer McIntosh.
Yes, she was staying at the hotel we were staying at when we were in Miami for the Grand Prix.
Oh,
yeah, and she was swimming at a tier championship across the street from our hotel in Fort Lauderdale. It's pretty cool. We had a whole Team Canada was down there.
I love that.
Crazy. And I wanted to go and check it out and watch and but I had to work, so I couldn't.
Well, that's a bummer. That's very, very cool. Well, Tim, listen, man, I am looking forward to catching up Thursday. We will be back for Thursday's show. We'll have our sim ready to go, and we have another race weekend ahead of us. It is the Spanish Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz's home race. Looking forward to it. Tim, have a great week until then.
Thanks, buddy. You too.